Welcome to DTV, your source for news and information about the Knox County Democratic Party. I'm Michael Davis, and I'll be your host for today's program with former Mayor of Nashville, Karl. He'll be on the upcoming ballot in the primary election on Thursday, August 2nd, as one of the candidates for the governor of Tennessee. Mayor Dean, thank you so much for being here with us today, and welcome to DTV.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's an honor to speak with you today. So, being a candidate for governor is a tremendous opportunity and undertaking a responsibility. So, let alone serving as a governor, of course. What in your life have you experienced that has influenced your decision to run for this office?
Well, I think I've spent most of my career as a public servant. When I got out of law school, I joined the public defender's office as an assistant public defender. Served as an assistant for about 7 years. And the big thing about that was I felt it was a really rewarding job. I was helping people every day. Learned a lot, obviously, about the criminal justice system, but also learned a lot about alcoholism, drug addiction, mental illness, the importance of education. And then I ran for public defender and was elected in 1990, re-elected in 94 and 98. And then I became the city's, Nashville's director of law, the city's attorney, handled all Nashville's legal affairs. And then I served as mayor from 07 to 15 and had two very different terms. One, the first term very challenging in terms of the economy and a major flood. But then the boom began and we certainly left office with cranes everywhere and the city moving forward very dramatically. So I think those experiences in terms of working in government and particularly working at the executive level have influenced the way I look at this. And I decided to run for governor because I'm absolutely convinced that people of Tennessee want a governor who's going to be pragmatic, have common sense, kind of get things done, not somebody who is going to be an extremist or analyze everything through party lenses. I'm a Democrat and proud of it. Ran for public defender as a Democrat and been a Democrat really all my life. But when I ran for mayor, it's a nonpartisan race. And so you had to get Democrats, Republicans, and independents to vote for me. And then when you do the job, you do it, what's going to move the city forward, what's going to make it a better place to live, and you look for agreement, how you can get things done. And that's what I want to do for the state.
Right. When you were presiding as mayor during the flood, did you ever think at that time that there was going to be such a dramatic turnaround for Nashville's fortunes and the amount of population boom and development just a few years later?
Yeah, I did. I thought, one of the things we were doing even before the flood and during the recession was investing in the city and working hard in economic development. We had gone forward with the project to build the new convention center. It was controversial and it was hard to get it done, but we did. And actually it was the perfect time to build it because it was never going to be cheaper. And I just felt that the city was on the verge of taking off, that we needed to be doing a lot more with tourism and hospitality, and we needed to be a lot more aggressive about economic development. And so I was confident long term the city was moving in a really positive direction. I was very happy to see us come out of those recession and flood years and see the boom begin really towards the end of my first term.
Okay. So what do you see as some of the top challenges for our state over the next 8 years?
Well, for me, I think the top three challenges for the state are public education, which to me is the underlying issue for everything. We need to be a state that continues to produce more college graduates, but we also need to be a state that recognizes that not everyone will go to college and that we need to have first-class vocational programs and technical programs that allow people to get good jobs so they can make a good living. I think we need to be paying our teachers more. I think the teachers are the key to success in school, and you want to attract the best and retain them. I think we got to keep education as a top priority. When I was mayor, we increased the school budget by about 37%. We did over $620 million in capital programs for schools and moved starting teacher pay from 30th in the state to 3rd. And that's the kind of thing we got to do. Governor Haslam, Governor Bredesen have both been strong governors when it comes to education, and we got to keep that up. That's what we need to do. And the second thing I would say is economic opportunity. There's a lot of good news in the state. You got places like Knoxville, Chattanooga, and Nashville are booming. Clearly Memphis has a lot of good things going on, but it also needs to address some issues about poverty, and the state should be helpful with that. But there are rural and small town communities that are struggling. I mean, communities that lost jobs in the 80s and 90s, like the apparel industry leaving, they haven't gotten back. There are places where you don't have access to broadband. There are places where the tax base doesn't allow you to do what we need to do with education. And there are places where hospitals have closed. 15 out of 21 counties, I think, in West Tennessee are losing population. So we need to focus our economic development energies there. And then I think in small towns all over the state. And I'm a big believer that you need a strong, robust private sector economy to make everything work. And then healthcare. I mean, it's clear that the Medicaid decision expansion, the legislature's refusal to do it was a terrible mistake. We've lost $4 billion. We have thousands of people who can't get access to insurance. We have 10 hospitals closed, mostly in rural, small town Tennessee. So doing the Medicaid expansion would be a top priority for me. So those are the three main issues.
Okay. And starting back off there with Medicaid, Tennessee has been a conservative-leaning state for quite a while, fiscally and socially. There seems to have been a little bit of disconnect between what the Medicaid expansion could do, especially for parts of rural Tennessee that you were mentioning. But for many people, it seems like it's basically a very logical decision. You provide for people's health care. They have a basis that they need to, one, be healthy and then be productive, so that they can actually hold down a job and be productive at it, or go to school and be, participate in a productive education. But still a lot of people, it seems like, especially in the legislature at least, and then some in the public, seem to be still opposed to the idea of Medicaid expansion, while at the same time, we're taking those dollars and exporting them out of the state. Right. So it really seems like it seems logical that we should be keeping those dollars at home, spending them on our own population to make it healthier so that it can do all those things. But yet there still seems to be this disconnect. Where others have failed in getting this accomplished with Medicaid expansion, what do you feel like you could do differently to lead the state legislature and lead the public opinion in a way that would be more accepting of that?
Well, I think this is a classic example of what I talked about at the beginning, that I think politics is about working together, and it's about not being hyper-partisan. The decision not to expand Medicaid was done largely in a context where the Republican Party in Tennessee didn't want to do anything that would be perceived as being helpful or supportive to President Obama. Right? That's not a good way to make a decision. The way you make a decision is what's going to benefit the citizens of Tennessee, what's going to put Tennessee in a better position for the future. I think we can look back now at that decision and say this was done wrong. You got the hard evidence of 10 hospitals closing. You got the evidence of $4 billion not coming into our economy. As you mentioned, we're paying taxes and that money's going out, but we're not getting our fair share of Medicaid dollars. And 34 states now, I believe, have done Medicaid expansion, including Mike Pence, who's governor of Indiana, when they did it. And he's not a liberal, all right?
Right.
And so, I mean, the argument for it is so strong, and I think you don't do it in sort of a gloating way, or this is the Democratic way. This is just the right way. Right. And it's the right way not just only to provide people with access to insurance, but it's the right thing because it makes sense economically. You talk to anybody in the medical field, almost anybody, they say it was a huge mistake, and that includes people who are operating private hospitals, own hospital companies. They see it as a mistake too. And the voters, according to all the polls, the voters now strongly support Medicaid expansion. So I think we can get it done. I think you just got to approach it and say, look, Virginia just did it 2 months ago.
Okay. So the governor's office, of course, is limited in this kind of action. You can't do it all by yourself. So who are your primary allies in getting that accomplished?
Medicaid expansion?
Yes.
Well, I think number one, the biggest ally would be the voters of Tennessee. If I'm elected governor, that will be the most powerful message that the voters can send that they want Medicaid expansion. And I think that's something that would get the legislators' attention. I think your other allies are folks who are healthcare providers, people who are trying to help those people with disabilities and pre-existing conditions have access to healthcare. I think there's huge support for it in the business community too. That has been there, and that can be further mobilized and brought into the contest to help. There's a lot of people supporting it. I mean, it is. I think this is the issue I get asked about the most. I don't know if it's the top thing on voters' minds, but it's certainly the question that is asked the most frequently to me.
All right. Tying back into the other two major points that you had, economic development and education, it seems like we were just referring to that those are really all very connected to the healthcare situation in a lot of ways. And you mentioning the rural counties. I'm from one of those counties that lost, I think it's a community health center in Polk County. They're major employers,
right,
wherever they are as well. And then, like you mentioned, in some of these rural areas, they lost some manufacturing jobs. So what's on the horizon? What can we do in Tennessee to develop something that's going to be a little more forward-thinking, a little more durable for the future for these rural areas?
Yeah, I think obviously, I think we always have to be supportive of the agriculture and the farm community, which is such a critical part of the state's economy. I think you also want to look and work with local leaders to determine what they see as their strengths in terms of economic development. And then I think you've got to use the tools that your commission or your economic development folks have to put an emphasis on helping the areas of the state, rural, small town, that are struggling. And to do that, I mean, one of the key things is you've got to create the quality of life. You got to work on issues like education. You got to work on healthcare. It's hard to attract a business when you don't have a hospital.
Exactly.
And it's hard to attract business if you're not producing the workforce that is needed. And so I think I would use all the economic development tools at my disposal to be of help. And then I would place increased emphasis on education, because I think the big issue long-term for Tennessee is going to be whether we're going to develop the workforce that can fill all the jobs that we're going to get. Under the way the new tax laws work, doing business in a state like Tennessee is more attractive than ever. And there will be lots of companies from different parts of the country who will want to come here and create business. But for that to succeed, we got to have the workforce here to take those jobs. And hopefully we want the jobs that are going to be better than minimum wage, better jobs, and you got to have the workforce. So the emphasis has got to be on education and training, in my mind.
Yeah, a very important point there about with the kind of development that we are seeing, we still have a little bit of a wage gap, whether it's from some of the higher paying jobs that are attracting people from out of state that's leaving some people, some Tennesseans behind, or it's the education difference there. We still seem to be having a large percentage of the population that's a little bit left out on that economic growth. What sort of things within your power as a governor or within its leadership capabilities could you do to spread a little bit more of that growth around and narrow some of that wage gap?
I think the best thing you can do, again, is work on the basics, which is education, work on things like healthcare. And then I think you use your economic development tools in a way that's going to spread the development around the state. I mean, right now, certainly if there was a great project in Knoxville or Nashville or Chattanooga where someone was looking to come here that was going to be a great thing for the economy, you do that deal. But at the same time, you can be looking to try to encourage folks to be looking for different parts of the state where jobs are needed more to set up their business there. And I think you try to be as helpful as possible and partner with those communities in their economic development efforts. That's what I would do.
Okay. On that education note, we've seen, it's been in the news quite a bit over the past few years with pre-K all the way through university. We've got lots of issues going on with diversity issues, inequity issues from one school at one end of the county to the other, one issue that we definitely see here in Knox County. And also the executive and even legislative branch's involvement in the UT system at at a level that we've seen that is kind of unprecedented within the last few years. So what are some of your ideas about that? We've got lots of issues going on around school vouchers and charter schools. I want to specifically ask you about that, but also what about the Tennessee legislature's involvement in UT?
Well, let's talk about UT first, since we're here in Knoxville. What my vision for UT Knoxville, it would be that we should strive to put it on a course to be an institution very similar to University of Georgia, University of Texas, and Austin. I mean, that's where we should be striving for. I think it is best, clear that the state legislature let the folks who have the job of running the university run the university. I don't think the legislature or governor has any role in coming in and deciding what the curriculum should be and deciding, what clubs there should be or weighing in on issues that are better for academics and
or whether
others.
There's a diversity.
Yeah, well, I mean, they clearly shouldn't do that. I mean, that's part of education, and you shouldn't politicize the running of a university. That's my sense of it. And if you empower people to do a great job running the university, it's going to make our state stronger. It's going to hurt our state if people think that the legislature is trying to run it or use it for their own political gamesmanship. I think in terms of schools and disparities, I think we need to open up and look at how we fund our schools statewide. People always are nervous about looking at the per pupil expenditure and how it gets done. But I can tell you from traveling around the state, I mean, I've been to lots of rural communities and talked to superintendents, and they'll tell you it's a lot harder for them because they don't have the tax base, they don't have the sales tax base that you have in the cities. I mean, there are some rural communities that don't have car dealerships, they don't have appliance stores. And so their ability to do anything is really limited. And then there are certain urban areas that have enormous challenges because of urban poverty and English as a second language and other issues. So I think all that should be examined and look for ways we can do it fair. I'm a strong opponent of vouchers. I don't think vouchers have a role because they take money literally out of the school system. Public charters, I think, can play a role in urban areas. They're public schools. I mean, I think that gets often lost in the discussion, but they're public schools. I don't see them as a panacea that would change everything, and I don't think they have much of a role in suburban or rural areas, but in areas of poverty, areas where there have been lots of kids left behind, I think there's a role to play.
Those charter schools, there have been a few of those in Nashville.
Yeah,
right?
Memphis, Nashville, yeah.
Any specific examples of how those have turned out some good results, or any cons at the same time?
Well, I mean, there's always, no matter what you do, there's going to be some that will not succeed, and they shouldn't continue to operate if they're not successful. But I think you could look at some of the schools in Nashville are outperforming other schools, and in general, the schools in Nashville have worked with kids who are most at risk, or working in areas where the schools haven't been producing the results that we want. I mean, when I came into office, Nashville in '07 was looking at the state putting in principals in the schools, and we weren't getting the results we needed, and we kind of turned things around, working with the school board and the director of schools, and put a lot of money into it, as I said. And it's not just charters, it's, I'm putting money into increasing teacher salaries, 37% increase for public education, and we got better results, but there's a lot of work to go. I mean, you never stop on this issue. You never get it all right, and Tennessee is in a position where we got a lot to do, and we need to continue to keep it a priority, and we need to continue to invest.
Okay. Turning back to broader ideas there, what specific things would you hope to accomplish within your first 6 months in office were you to be elected?
I think the first thing you would work on, obviously, is Medicaid expansion. I think a first year goal for me would be to look at teacher salaries. Because I do think, again, talking to rural superintendents, they'll tell you they finally get a great math teacher, and then another system, usually a suburban or an urban one in Tennessee, will offer $10,000 more, and they lose that teacher. We're losing teachers to Georgia, we're losing teachers to Kentucky, and so I think we got to deal with that. Those would be the top two things that I would try to do almost immediately.
Okay. All right. Turning back to one thing that you mentioned a minute ago, taxation. Tennessee's been rated one of the most regressive tax states in the union for several years. We just recently passed Louisiana as the state with the highest sales tax in the country due to a tax decrease that went into effect just this month in Louisiana. So we have kind of a dubious honor there. Given, and of course, a regressive sales tax refers to the percentage that it takes out of a person's income regardless of what income they make. When it's a regressive sales tax, of course, it takes more out of a lower person's income than it does for a person with a higher income. So it's more of a burden on the less economically advantaged people in the state. So that's where we are with Tennessee by the metrics. Given the recent Tennessee constitutional amendment that prevents us from having any income tax and limits our options, what options do you see available to raise funds that we need, where with some of these rural areas you said that might benefit from tax revenue and the forms of educational help that they need, when we do have things like this amendment in place and a general opposition amongst the populace and definitely the legislature for any sort of new taxes or tax increases?
Right. Well, it's difficult because I think what you said, that sort of the conclusion of your question, is there is large public support for our current tax system. I mean, the voters decided themselves overwhelmingly not to have an income tax, and so that's off the table. And I think we're going to have revenue challenges, and the best way to have more revenue is to have growth and to have better jobs here and to see economic growth all over the state. I mean, certainly when you have parts of the state that are losing population, that's a problem. I mean, if you just look at maintaining the tax base, if you start losing people and you're dependent upon sales tax and property tax to operate your local government and your state government for sales tax, that's going to hurt you. And so what I tried to do in Nashville was to always be conscious of the fact that we wanted to improve schools, we wanted to improve public safety, we wanted to invest in the amenities like sidewalks and greenways and libraries, the things that make a city exciting to live in. But to do that, we had to create revenue, and the revenue gets created when you make an investment like the convention center and bring in more sales tax. It gets created when you create more jobs. It gets created when you just have a more robust economy, and that's what your goal has got to be around the state. And at the same time you're doing that, I mean, just not to be too gloomy here, but you also got to keep in mind that we haven't had a recession in this country for over 8 years. Governor Haslam is, I think, the first governor in modern times here who has served 8 years without a recession. We have not repealed the business cycle. There will be a downturn. There will be a recession. And we have to be ready for it. And one of the ways you do that is you build up the rainy day fund. Obviously, it was fairly well depleted during the Great Recession that I was mayor during. We, I think, now have funds that we could operate the state for about 28 or 29 days that we need to do better. So at the same time we're working on all these things we need to do for the future, we got to be putting money aside for that rainy day. That will happen. Hopefully, will not be as bad as 08, but something will be.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not. And on that note, if were there to be another downturn, one of the things that we see rise in times like that are the need for social services.
Right.
But the budget usually cuts them too,
right,
when we have those kinds of downturns, which kind of exacerbates problems. So, would you be in favor of setting some of that rainy day fund as it would be aside for certain social services, especially for DCS, other mental health providers, when those hard times hit, so that people aren't left out in the cold, so to speak?
Yeah, I think. Yes, I mean, clearly most state services, I mean, we are a state that most of our services are doing positive things. And obviously you can always look at government and find things that you can cut, and you can find things that you don't need if you look hard enough. But most services that we do as a state, particularly as it relates to social services, are vitally important. And we need to continue to support having an adequate rainy day fund, and that just requires the discipline to get it done. And it's something that most, that people look at in terms of our fiscal soundness, is that we have an adequate fund there. We need to be doing more with that.
Okay. One of the most important questions I think that our viewers would like to hear you answer is, you have a primary challenger, State House Representatives Minority Leader Craig Fitzhugh, and no matter which one of you it is in the general election, you're going to face a Republican opponent that is likely going to be populist, likely going to be very well known, likely going to be very well funded. And also one who will be most likely closely aligning themselves with Donald Trump and his policies. Why would you be the Democrat with the best chance of winning in the general election?
Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons. I would argue that I'm in the best position to win, but I just look at the numbers, look at the polls. I mean, if you look at name recognition statewide, where I am compared to my primary opponent, substantially ahead. If you look at the most recent independent poll that came out from Emerson College, it has me actually running even or ahead of the two leading candidates on the Republican side. We've been able to work hard on fundraising. We have over 7,500 donors to the campaign. The last reporting period, we outrose every candidate in the race. Amongst independents, according to Vanderbilt, I have the highest favorability of any candidate. So, I mean, I just think on the numbers, if you just take the personalities and backgrounds and all that out of it, I think I have a pathway to win. I would also say that, my background, I've worked as an chief executive of a large government. Nashville was pushing a $2 billion budget when I left. I think I've managed through difficult times, and I've managed through some real good times. And I have a pretty strong understanding of some of the social issues of poverty and that our state also faces from my time as a public defender. So, I mean, we have nothing bad to say about my opponent, but I just think I'm better positioned to be successful.
Okay. Well, we just have about a minute left. Anything else that you would like our viewers to know about you? And also, where can people get in touch with you to help out with your campaign if they like?
Get a hold of us at karldean.com, and that's Karl, KARLDEAN, one word.com. And I guess what I'd say is I've really enjoyed this process. I've been to all over the state now, and it's been a great experience. And I just ask people for their vote and their support. And I do think we can win this. I'm doing this because I think we've got some real clear goals where we want to take the state. I think I'm the right person to get it done, and I think we can win.
All right. Well, Mayor Dean, thank you so much for spending time. It's been an honor to talk with you today, and wish you the best of luck out there on the campaign trail. For our viewers, early voting has already started, and it runs through July the 28th. Remember that Election Day is on Thursday, August 2nd. And if you need any information about where to vote in Knox County or who the candidates are, you can look that up on www.knoxcounty.org/elections. And thank you, as always, for watching. I'm Michael Davis. This has been our segment with Democratic candidate for Governor Karl Dean. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.